A poor student married a wealthy 70-year-old woman. However, after 7 days, he was shocked when she asked him. Dmitry Ivanov was only 23 years old, but it seemed that he carried the weight of the whole world on his shoulders. A diligent law student, he believed that only hard work and perseverance would help him build a better future. However, reality tested his strength again and again. 2 years ago, the sudden death of his father shattered everything. A lightning-fast heart attack took away the man who had been the pillar of the family, leaving Dmitry not only with the bitterness of loss but also with an avalanche of responsibilities. Old debts, which no one had suspected, began to surface in the form of endless bills and letters with threats. Dmitry became the head of the family, but he had no resources to support his sick mother and the youngest of his sisters to provide her with the necessary treatment. But the cost of medicines, tests, and chemotherapy was unbearable. Meanwhile, his 14-year-old sister Clara, despite the difficulties, tried to smile and continued to dream of becoming a veterinarian. Dmitry hid from her the full horror of their situation. Trying every envelope was a reminder that he was losing the battle. He worked as an assistant in a small law firm, but his salary was barely enough for the essentials. Sometimes he wondered if he was doing everything possible. How could he save his mother, give his sister a future, and continue his studies at the same time? One day, one of the lawyers called him aside. "Dmitry, you work a lot. I want to invite you to a social evening this week. I think you need a little distraction." The invitation seemed absurd to Dmitry. He had neither the time nor the money, not even the proper attire for attending a high society event. But giving in to persistence, he agreed, deciding that perhaps this was a chance to make useful connections. Something he had always heard was an important part of success in the profession. That evening, Dmitry found himself in a completely different world. The mansion where the event was held was magnificent. Sparkling chandeliers, classical music in the background, and elegantly dressed people. Dmitry felt out of place but tried to blend into the crowd. He walked around the hall, trying not to attract attention, until someone approached him. The woman standing in front of him was unlike anyone Dmitry had known before. Despite her age, she exuded confidence, as if the whole world was in her hands. Her gaze was piercing but devoid of arrogance. "Young man, you are not from here, are you?" Dmitry hesitated but answered honestly, "No, madam, I am here by chance." The conversation, which started as a fleeting exchange, lasted longer than Dmitry could have imagined. Elena was genuinely interested in his life, his family, and his dreams. Dmitry, not understanding why, told her more than he had ever told a stranger before. By the end of the evening, he said goodbye, unaware that this meeting would forever change his fate. In the following days, Dmitry tried to return to his routine, but thoughts of Elena Mikhailovna surfaced in his mind more and more often. Her confidence, attention, and ability to see more in him than just a poor student left an imprint on his soul. Meanwhile, at home, problems continued to grow. His mother's condition worsened, and even Clara, trying to stay strong, began to show signs of anxiety. Dmitry did everything he could to reassure his sister, but he knew he was on the edge. The debts grew, and the feeling of helplessness consumed him more and more. And then, on an ordinary day, something unexpected happened. Dmitry was in the small law office where he worked when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was firm, but kind. "Dmitry, this is Elena Mikhailovna. I hope you remember me." He was surprised but politely replied, "Of course, I remember you, Elena Mikhailovna. How can I help you?" "In fact, Dmitry, I believe I can be of help to you. I would like you to come to my home. I have an important matter to discuss with you." The call puzzled him. What could Elena possibly need? Why would such a powerful and distant woman take an interest in him, an ordinary student struggling to survive? Dmitry thought about ignoring the invitation, but, remembering his mother and sister, decided he had nothing to lose. The next day, he went to Elena's mansion. In daylight, the estate looked even more impressive. Dmitri was met by the housekeeper and soon found himself in a luxurious room where Elena was waiting for him, sitting comfortably in a chair with an expression of calmness that concealed determination. "Dmitri, thank you for coming," she said, pointing to the chair opposite. "Sit down, we need to discuss something." Dmitri obeyed, feeling tension build inside him. Elena didn't beat around the bush. "I will speak plainly. I see something in you that is very rare, and that is why I want to make you an offer." Dmitri listened intently, but nothing could have prepared him for what she said next. "I want to marry you." The words struck like thunder from a clear sky. Dmitri blinked, trying to comprehend whether he had heard correctly. "Elena Mikhailovna, with all due respect, what do you mean?" Elena smiled slightly. "I know this sounds strange, but hear me out. I am not talking about love or romance. This is a contract. You need help, and I have my own reasons." Dmitri didn't know how to react. Marriage to a woman he barely knew? But as he thought about his family and the burden he carried, he began to realize that there was a strange logic in her words. "Think about my offer, Dmitri. Come back tomorrow with your decision," she said firmly. "But remember, sometimes the most unexpected opportunities change our lives forever." Her words echoed in Dmitri's head all night. He couldn't sleep, wondering how his life had come to this moment. "I want to marry you." It seemed unreal, but her offer promised something he couldn't ignore, a chance to save his family. The decision was not easy. Saying yes meant giving up a normal life, facing judgment from others, and stepping into a role he didn't fully understand. But the image of his sick mother and his sister with her dreams guided him toward the right choice. Dmitri couldn't afford to hesitate. The next morning, he returned to the mansion with a heavy heart but firm determination. Elena met him in the living room, as calm as ever. "So, Dmitri, have you thought about my offer?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but full of hidden meaning. "Yes, I have thought about it. My answer is yes," he said, trying to sound confident. "But I need to understand what you expect from me." She smiled slightly, as if she had predicted his answer. "My expectation is simple: mutual understanding. I do not ask for love or emotional attachment. I only need you to trust me and fulfill your role." Dmitri felt a chill run down his spine. This woman, with her piercing gaze, clearly had a plan deeper than it seemed at first glance. The wedding happened quickly, without grandeur or romance, only the necessary formalities. Signatures, a few witnesses, and an atmosphere of awkward formality. Dmitri understood that this was not a usual marriage, but a carefully calculated agreement. After the wedding, Dmitri's life changed dramatically. For the first time in many years, he no longer had to worry about money. The debts were paid off. They enrolled Clara in a private school. Dmitri was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief for the first time in a long while, but something inside him remained uneasy. Elena, on the other hand, remained mysterious. She spent hours in her private study, writing letters and reviewing documents that Dmitri was not allowed to see. When they spent time together, she was polite but kept her distance, as if avoiding any personal attachments. One day, while wandering through the mansion's corridors, Dmitri noticed a slightly open door. Peeking inside, he saw Elena sitting at her desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a sheet of paper. Dmitri quietly stepped back, trying not to reveal his presence, but the image was imprinted in his memory. That same evening, Elena called him for a conversation. She was sitting in the living room, and in front of her, on the table, lay a sealed envelope. "Dmitri, it's time for you to know why I made this proposal," she said. Her voice was serious but calm. "Read this, and everything will become clear." Dmitri took the envelope and began to open it, but her words made him pause. "I want you to know that what is written here is only the beginning," she said. He looked at her, confused and tense. "The beginning of what?" he asked. She simply looked at him, her gaze a mix of determination and sadness. Dmitri held the envelope in his hands but hesitated before opening it. Her piercing gaze felt so deep, as if she could see not only his actions but his very thoughts. "Why don't you just explain it to me?" he asked, trying to hide a mix of anxiety and frustration. "Some things must be learned gradually," she replied. "Dmitri, read it, and you will understand everything." Dmitri retreated to his room, where he finally opened the envelope. Inside were a handwritten letter and a document. Elena's confident handwriting filled the page with words that seemed to echo in his mind as he read, "Dmitri, if you are reading this, it means you have accepted not only my proposal but also the burden that comes with it. What I am about to say may not be easy to understand, but I believe you will manage." The letter continued, revealing a truth Dmitri had never expected. Elena was ill. Her diagnosis was terminal, and it had completely changed her perspective on life. She had no family, no heirs, no close people she could trust. Marrying Dmitri was not a whim, but a carefully considered decision. "I chose you because I saw something in you that I don't see in the people around me. Honesty. Despite all the hardships, you remain true to yourself. You are the person I want to entrust my legacy to." Dmitri felt the weight of these words settle on his shoulders. He did not know if he was ready for such responsibility, but he understood that Elena was right in her assessment. He had always fought, even when the whole world was against him. The document attached to the letter was unexpected. It was a power of attorney, transferring control of a vast fortune to Dmitri, along with the management of a charitable foundation that Elena had spent her life building. When Dmitri returned to the living room, Elena was waiting for him calmly. "Well, have you read it?" she asked in an even tone. "I have," he replied, "but I don't understand why you trust me with something like this. We are practically strangers." Elena sighed, looking out the window, as if searching for answers on the horizon. "I saw in you something I never saw in the people closest to me: honesty and compassion. All my life, I have been surrounded by those who only thought about what they could take from me. But you, Dmitri, never asked for anything, yet you were willing to sacrifice everything for your family. And now, what do you want me to do?" Dmitri asked, still trying to process what he had just learned. "I want you to use it for good. I'm not going to tell you how to live, Dmitri. Just trust yourself and who you are." It had only been 7 days since the wedding, and they had felt like a whirlwind. Now, he stood before a future he could never have imagined. Elena had given him not just wealth, but a purpose. Yet, Dmitri was unsure if he was ready to accept it. It felt as if he were living in a parallel reality, one where everything he once knew had changed. Meanwhile, Elena remained remarkably calm. She continued her usual routine, writing letters, reviewing documents, as if preparing for her departure. Dmitri, on the other hand, felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier each day. One evening, while they were both in the library, he finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been tormenting him. "I still don't understand why you chose me. You could have trusted anyone. Experts, advisors." Elena looked at him with a sad smile. "Because most people I have met in my life care only about themselves. I don't want this legacy to fall into the hands of those who see it only as a means to accumulate power or wealth. I need someone who can do more. And you, Dmitri, have something that others don't: a heart that still believes in good and evil." Dmitri remained silent, trying to process her words. He didn't know if he would be able to justify her trust, but he understood that he had no right to let her down. Spending more time with Elena, Dmitri began to learn more about her charitable foundation. Elena had dedicated years of her life to helping impoverished communities, funding educational projects, and supporting young people in difficult situations. She did it with great passion, but, as she admitted, she had become disillusioned with people who only sought personal gain. "That's why I stopped trusting people," she explained one day. "Until I met you." Gradually, Dmitri began to take part in the foundation's work, getting to know those whose lives had been changed thanks to Elena. He met young people who had received scholarships, families who had managed to get back on their feet, and entire communities transformed by her efforts. For the first time, he began to grasp the scale of what Elena had built. Yet, despite the gratitude he saw around him, Dmitri continued to doubt whether he could bear this legacy. Did he have the strength to live up to Elena's trust? In the last week of her life, Dmitri spent more and more time with her. Their conversations became increasingly personal and deep. Elena spoke about her youth, her achievements, but also her regrets. She shared stories of choices she had made, and ones she hadn't, saying that money had never brought the joy she had imagined. In the end, the only thing that matters is the mark you leave on the lives you touch, she said one day. Her voice was weak but full of warmth. On her final day, as they said goodbye, she told him, "Don't be afraid. You have everything you need to handle this." A few hours later, she passed away peacefully. Without Elena, the mansion felt different. The silence that once reflected her calm and mysterious nature now felt empty and heavy. Dmitri wandered through the hallways, trying to process the loss of the woman who, in such a short time, had completely changed his life. Despite everything Elena had left him, the fortune, the leadership of the foundation, and most importantly, faith in his abilities, Dmitri felt lost. He didn't know where to start. The responsibility seemed too great for someone who, just weeks ago, had struggled to make ends meet. Sitting in his new luxurious living room, Dmitri sorted through the documents Elena had prepared for him. Among the papers, he found a letter written in her familiar style, direct yet warm. "Dmitri, if you are reading this, it means that the road is now yours. I want you to know, I do not expect perfection from you. I only hope that you will do everything you can with what I have left you. Use this wealth to give hope to those who, like you, have felt the weight of the world on their shoulders. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes will be your greatest teacher." But despite this, he still had doubts. What gave him the right to take on such responsibility? In the following days, he focused on the foundation's activities. Dmitri visited several projects started by Elena and met people whose lives had changed because of her. One young woman told him that she had been able to graduate from medical school thanks to the foundation's support. "You believed in me when no one else did," the young woman said, tears in her eyes. These encounters deeply moved Dmitri. He began to understand the true meaning of Elena's legacy. It wasn't about money, but about what could be done with it to help others. Meanwhile, his mother, Marina, had finally started recovering. The treatment was working, and with each passing day, she was growing stronger. Clara, in turn, was thriving as well. Dmitri felt immense relief seeing his family flourish, but he knew his journey did not end there. One evening, while in his office, he made a decision. Dmitri picked up the phone and called the directors of the foundation. "I want to gather everyone. We have a lot of work to do." The next day, he presented his vision for the future of the organization, helping those in difficult situations and creating new opportunities for those in need, just as Elena had once helped him. By the end of the meeting, Dmitri felt something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. He realized that Elena had left him Not just a legacy, but a new reason to live. Now, he wasn't just carrying on her name. He was building something that changed lives, starting with his own. Under Dimitri's leadership, the foundation began to grow beyond its original scope. It invested in educational programs, medical assistance, and support initiatives for talented young people in need. For the first time, Dimitri felt that his life was no longer just about survival. It had gained a deeper meaning. Every day was a new challenge, but also a new victory. He worked tirelessly to ensure that every initiative honored Elena's memory. Even with all the progress, he often wondered if he was truly living up to the trust she had placed in him. One of the most significant moments was a ceremony organized by one of the foundation's first scholarship recipients, a young doctor who had completed his education thanks to Elena's support. During his speech, he shared how the foundation had not only saved his career, but also his mother's life, as she had needed urgent medical treatment. Those words reminded Dimitri that Elena's legacy lived on in every life that was saved. If it weren't for this help, I wouldn't be standing here today, saving lives. Thank you, Dimitri, and thank you to the memory of Elena Mikhailovna, who believed in me when no one else did. His speech moved everyone in the audience, but for Dimitri, it meant something even greater. He realized that he wasn't just carrying a responsibility. His choices had a real impact on people's lives. For the first time, the doubts that had once haunted him began to fade. As the foundation flourished, Dimitri dedicated more time to his family. His mother, Marina, had fully recovered and often reminded him how much he had changed their lives. Clara was excelling in school and was already making plans to study veterinary medicine. "You did it, Dimitri. You made this happen," she said. "No, Mom," he replied, squeezing her hands. "Elena gave me a chance, but my strength has always been in you." Despite all his achievements, Dimitri never forgot the woman who had made it all possible. He dedicated a special room in the foundation's building to Elena's memory, filling it with her photographs, letters, and excerpts from her speeches. It was his way of preserving her legacy and inspiring others. On a cold winter day, Dimitri was invited to a special event, the opening of a vocational school funded by the foundation. The most memorable moment came when he was asked to speak. "When I began this journey, I didn't know if I was ready. There were more doubts than certainty, more fear than courage. But one person believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And today, I see that belief spreading to others." As he spoke, he saw tears in the eyes of many in the audience. In that moment, he understood that Elena's message, once entrusted to him, was now reaching others. Her influence was not just lasting, it had become eternal. The hall filled with applause, standing before the audience. Dimitri felt an overwhelming mix of emotions that were impossible to put into words. Young graduates holding their diplomas, smiling mothers, carefree children playing. All of them were living proof of Elena Mikhailovna's impact and the work that Dimitri had chosen to continue. When the event ended, Dimitri remained on stage for a few moments, looking at the foundation's banners bearing Elena's name. He couldn't hold back a sad smile as he remembered the woman who, in such a short time, had completely changed his life. Everything he had wanted so badly to protect remained untouched. "How was the event?" Marina asked, handing him a cup of tea. Dimitri smiled, holding the cup in his hands. "It was amazing, Mom, but more importantly, it reminded me that everything was not in vain." Clara, sitting nearby, looked at him with admiration. "I always knew you would succeed," she said, her eyes shining. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of rain beginning outside. The gentle tapping of raindrops created a cozy atmosphere in the house. Dmitri stood up and walked to the window, watching as the droplets slid down the glass. He thought about Elena, about her words, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He made his way to Elena's memorial room in the Foundation's building. The quiet room was illuminated by soft light filtering through the windows. Dmitri approached the display case where one of her last letters lay. He read the lines that had always inspired him once more. "It's not about how much time you have, Dmitri. What matters is what you do with it. The mark you leave on the lives of others defines who you are. Trust yourself." Dmitri's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, pride, and confidence that he was on the right path. As he stepped out of the room, he encountered a group of young scholarship recipients from the Foundation. One of them called out to him, "Dmitri, thank you for everything. You changed my life." Dmitri stopped, looked at him, and with a sincere smile replied, "It wasn't me, it was Elena." Looking ahead, he felt that a new chapter was beginning. He knew that this journey would never truly end because what Elena had given him and what he now passed on to others was more than just a legacy. It was a flame, continuing to burn, passed from one person to another, changing lives forever. Taking a deep breath, Dmitri moved forward with confident steps, ready to change the world, one act of kindness at a time.